tell you the truth, I'm a little shaky right now.
Carla wouldn't approve. She thinks it's dumb to spend $600 on an LP.
You fire that weapon, 20 pissed off prisoners are gonna hear it.
Last time, we looked at Will Smith, a man who treated his career like a business plan, who studied the data, built a formula, and executed it with surgical precision for 15 years.
I started at 15 and I was trying to make a big noise like punk rock and say, look at me, I'm here.
Nicolas Cage did none of that, not even close. Cage didn't have a formula. He didn't have a brand strategy. He didn't study box office data or pick roles based on what tested well with audiences. He picked roles based on whether they scared him, whether they let him do something he'd never done before, whether they let him go completely, certifiably insane on camera. And for a while, that worked spectacularly. Oscar winner, action superstar, one of the highest paid actors on the planet, $150 million in the bank. Then he spent it all, every last cent, on dinosaur skulls, haunted mansions, 2 European castles, and a pet octopus. And when the money ran out, he didn't disappear. He didn't retire quietly. He did something nobody expected. He made more movies. A lot more movies. Some of the worst movies ever released. And he gave every single one of them everything he had. This is the story of the most chaotic career in Hollywood history, and why it might also be the most honest. Nicolas Cage was born Nicolas Kim Coppola, and if that last name sounds familiar, it should. His uncle is Francis Ford Coppola, the man who directed The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, some of the greatest films ever made. Most people in Cage's position would have used that name like a golden ticket. He did the opposite. He buried it, changed his last name before his career even started, took Cage from a Marvel Comics character called Luke Cage, a superhero who was wrongly imprisoned and had to fight his way out. Which, looking back, is a pretty fitting origin story for what was coming. He didn't do this because he was ashamed of his family. He did it because every time he walked into an audition, casting agents would ask him about his uncle instead of letting him read. Actors on set treated him differently when they found out. He wanted to know, needed to know, that anything he achieved was his, not borrowed. And then he went about proving it in the most unhinged way possible. For his role in Birdie in 1984, he had 2 of his front teeth pulled. No prosthetics, real teeth extracted by a real dentist, because he thought it would help him understand the character's disfigurement. He was 20 years old. For Vampire's Kiss, he ate a live cockroach on camera. Not a prop, not a gummy, a real cockroach. He said afterward that it was the worst thing he'd ever done for a role, but that the audience needed to see genuine disgust on his face. This wasn't method acting the way most people understand it. Daniel Day-Lewis disappears into characters. Cage detonates himself into them. He's described his approach as nouveau shamanism, a phrase he invented because apparently the existing vocabulary for acting wasn't weird enough. And Hollywood didn't know what to do with him. Until suddenly, it did. In 1995, Cage starred in Leaving Las Vegas, playing an alcoholic screenwriter who goes to Las Vegas to drink himself to death. The performance is devastating. It's quiet where you expect it to be loud. It's tender where you expect it to be ugly. And it won him the Academy Award for Best Actor. He was 31, an Oscar winner with a Coppola pedigree he'd voluntarily discarded, a reputation for being brilliantly unpredictable, and suddenly, the full attention of every major studio in Hollywood. What happened next is where the Will Smith comparison gets interesting. Because Smith looked at this exact kind of career crossroads and chose the calculated path. Special effects, creatures, love story, repeat. Cage looked at the same crossroads and chose chaos. The Rock, Con Air, Face/Off, gone in 60 seconds. In the span of 4 years, Cage went from an indie Oscar winner to one of the biggest action stars on the planet. But he didn't do it the way other action stars did. He didn't play it cool. He didn't do stoic. He screamed. He wept. He chewed the scenery until there was nothing left to chew. In Face/Off, he plays both a terrorist and an FBI agent who literally swap faces. It's absurd. It shouldn't work. But Cage commits so fully to the madness that you believe every second of it. He's simultaneously the best and the most ridiculous thing in every frame.
Warning. But your voice makes even a hack like...
And the films made money, serious money. Between 1996 and 2006, Nicolas Cage films grossed billions worldwide. He was earning $20 million a picture, then $40 million in a single year. Forbes put him on the highest paid actors list. Studios loved him because he said yes to almost everything and brought an energy that no other actor could replicate. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody could have predicted. Because Nicolas Cage didn't just earn $150 million, he spent $150 million. And not on the things normal rich people buy. He bought 15 houses, at the same time, across multiple countries and continents. He bought a 67-million-year-old dinosaur skull for $276,000, outbidding Leonardo DiCaprio at auction, which later turned out to be stolen from Mongolia and had to be returned to the government. He bought 2 European castles, a medieval one in Germany and an 18th century one in England. He never slept a single night in the English one. He bought a private island in the Bahamas, 4 yachts, 9 Rolls-Royces, a Gulfstream jet, 2 albino king cobras, a pet octopus, and a 9-foot-tall pyramid tomb in a New Orleans cemetery, which is where he plans to be buried. When asked about the octopus years later, he said, and this is a real quote, "What is an octopus? $80? You're not going to go into dire straits buying an octopus." The octopus wasn't the problem, the castles were. The 15 simultaneous mortgages were. The real estate market crash of 2008, which turned every one of those properties upside down overnight. That was the problem. In 2009, the IRS came for him. $6.3 million in unpaid property taxes. His business manager warned him for years that he needed to earn $30 million a year just to maintain his lifestyle. Cage sued the manager for fraud. The manager countersued, saying he'd begged Cage to stop buying things. The lawsuits were eventually dismissed, and Cage was left with the bill. This is the moment where, if Nicolas Cage were Will Smith, he would have sat down with his manager, studied the data, built a comeback strategy, and picked his next 3 movies with surgical care. Cage did not do that. What Cage did was say yes to everything, to anything. He refused to file for bankruptcy. He's been very clear about this. He sees it as a point of pride, and instead decided to work his way out of debt, 1 movie at a time. And so began the most surreal stretch in the history of A-list Hollywood. Between 2009 and 2020, Nicolas Cage appeared in over 50 films. Most of them went straight to video. Some of them had budgets smaller than a single episode of a network television show. Many of them are genuinely terrible, and Cage gave every one of them his full, unhinged commitment. This is the part where most people write the punchline. Cage became a meme. The internet turned his most extreme moments, the bees scene from The Wicker Man, his screaming in Vampire's Kiss, into viral clips.
When I did Vampire's Kiss, it was my idea.
Not the bees became shorthand for overacting. People shared Nicolas Cage compilations the way they share blooper reels. He became a joke. But here's what gets lost in that story. Cage never phoned it in. He's said this repeatedly, and when you actually watch those films, even the bad ones, it's true. He shows up. He commits. He tries things that are insane and sometimes embarrassing, but he never, ever coasts. He told GQ, "When I was doing 4 movies a year, back to back to back, I still had to find something in them to be able to give it my all. They didn't work, all of them. Some of them were terrific, like Mandy, but some of them didn't work. But I never phoned it in." There's something almost heroic about that. Or maybe delusional, possibly both. But it's the exact opposite of the Will Smith approach. Smith would never have been caught dead in a straight-to-video thriller. His entire career was built on protecting the brand. Cage's approach was, there is no brand, there's only the work. Even when the work is terrible, the commitment is real. And then, in 2021, something shifted. A small film called Pig came out. Cage plays a reclusive truffle hunter living alone in the Oregon wilderness whose beloved foraging pig is stolen. The premise sounds absurd, like another meme waiting to happen. It's a masterpiece. Cage's performance is the quietest thing he's done since leaving Las Vegas, maybe quieter. There's no screaming, no mania, no scenery chewing. He plays grief and loss with a stillness that made critics completely reassess his entire career. Pig landed at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Reviewers called it a revelation. One critic wrote that the film was a powerful reminder that Cage is one of the most talented movie stars of our time. Then came the unbearable weight of massive talent, where he plays a fictionalized version of himself, a broke, aging actor forced to take a paid appearance at a billionaire's birthday party. It's funny, it's self-aware, and it works because Cage was willing to be the joke, and the punchline, and the genius, all at the same time.
For the big ride, baby!
Then, Dream Scenario, another critical hit, a Golden Globe nomination. And just like that, the meme became the comeback. The guy who'd spent a decade in straight-to-video purgatory was back on the A-list. Not because he'd carefully engineered his return, but because he'd never stopped working, never stopped caring, and eventually the work found its way back to material worthy of him. So, what does Nicolas Cage's career actually teach us, especially compared to Will Smith's? Smith built a fortress. Every decision was calculated to protect his position, his image, his box office record, and it worked brilliantly. Until the world changed, and one uncontrolled moment brought the whole thing crashing down. Cage never built a fortress. He built a bonfire. He threw everything into it: his money, his reputation, his dignity, sometimes his front teeth, and he stood in the heat and dared it to consume him. And sometimes it did. There are years of his career that are genuinely hard to defend, films that shouldn't exist, choices that make no sense on paper. But here's the thing about a bonfire versus a fortress. A fortress can be breached. Once the wall comes down, everything inside it is exposed and defenseless. A bonfire, though? A bonfire just keeps burning. You can throw water on it, you can mock it, you can ignore it. But as long as there's fuel, it doesn't go out. Cage's fuel is the work itself. Not the fame, not the money, not the brand. Just the act of showing up, committing fully, and seeing what happens. It's messy, it's inefficient, it's frequently embarrassing. But it's also indestructible because it doesn't depend on anyone else's approval to keep going. Will Smith needed the audience to love him. Nicolas Cage just needed a camera.
Maybe it was just a coincidence. I will look again. Are you ready?
No, don't make eye contact. That's how you spoke him.
Whether that makes him a genius or a madman probably depends on which of his 120 films you watched last. But there's something worth sitting with in the fact that after all of it, the Oscar, the fortune, the bankruptcy, the memes, the 50 straight-to-video films, Nicolas Cage is still here, still working, still caring, and somehow, against every possible odd, still relevant. He burned it all down. And then he built something better out of the ashes, not because he had a plan, but because he simply refused to stop. That's it for this one. If you found this interesting, subscribe. Next time on Stunt Casting, we're looking at an actor who never made a wrong move and what that kind of perfection actually costs. Denzel's perfect strategy.